All right, everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil, and today I want to talk about Relic 10. We're specifically going to ask some questions of Relic 10, do some speculation, talk about what you need to be doing to maybe prepare, hoard, some thoughts to get out there, because I think Relic 10 has kind of been overshadowed by Relic Delta, and I want to start having those conversations about Relic 10 because there is some important questions that I think need answered, and some impacts on the game that I don't know that we've necessarily talked about yet. So why Relic 10 is a big deal, and we need to be talking about it more. Let's get going here, guys. Give a huge shout out to the channel members, as always. If you're ever interested, that link is below. More importantly, join the Discord server down there. Thank you, folks, for being a part of the Fat family. I have some updates to make to these lists, but I wanted to do it here. Thank you all. I really appreciate it. Let's get in here, folks. Let's talk about Relic 10. Let's start, this conversation that I think we needed to have a week ago if it wasn't overshadowed for Relic Delta. All right, so the first thing, when is this happening? When is Relic 10 getting released? I think there's a lot of questions around the when. Like we've said, we've had Relic 9 now for 4 years. So this is a big moment of, hey, when does this happen? When is this going into effect? That I think just giving us a rough timeline of that would be really helpful so we can plan out your resources, plan out some of your farms. Because if you're thinking about going for something like Leviathan or Hondo or Ahsoka, these things that take up a lot of those Relic 9 resources, maybe there's a conversation to have that you don't want to do that, thinking that Relic 10 could be coming in and the impact that has on the general game and your roster. So I think when is a big question. Hey, when is this happening? Even just a rough timeline would be really helpful for a lot of us in the game. The next question I have that I think many others probably have is, how is it getting released? And what I mean by how is if I click on Ahsoka here, and I'm going to hide the fat face so you guys can see the materials here. So if you think about right now, Relic 8 requires the droid brain, the Gerda keypad, but it also requires the chromium transistor, the iridium heat sinks, electrum conductors, Zimbalist cards, impulse detectors, and arrow magnifiers, along with the 2 Relic 9 pieces. If we follow suit with that into Relic 10, where you'll now need 2 more pieces, for Relic 10 plus everything else, then there's a sort of supply-demand relationship that would need to get solved. And here's where I'm going to kind of show that. If you think about the raid store, the prices in the raid store here have kind of been developed with the expectation that, hey, Relic 9 is the end-all be-all, this is what you would need to do Relic 8s, and so on and so forth. And so, just kind of high-level understanding of that, if you release Relic 10, even if it doesn't make its way into this store, all of the prices in here are going to need adjusted based on the amount of that resource you need to go to Relic 10. So if the example is Gerda keypads where, hey, you now need 20 of these at Relic 9 and 20 of these at Relic 10, the price in this store to keep things flat, to keep the economy where it is, you need to reduce the price by 50%, or you need to increase the amount given by 2. So the example would be, hey, you now need 6 Gerda keypads for this price, and you need 4 Gerda keypads for this price. That would just keep the economy flat. Yes, Relic 9 would be, easier, but not really, because you need those to go to Relic 10, which is very similar to the Relic 8 situation we have now. With your impulse detectors and arrow magnifiers, when you think about these pieces, you would need to increase the price by decrease the price, by about 33%. Because we already need 40 of them, so now I need 60. That's an increase of, 33%, right? You're increasing by a third. Right, you're getting, going up from, 40 to 6, you do the math, so I think you kind of get there and you say, all right, a 33% decrease in the pricing feels about right. That, feels good. Again, just a simple way to do that would be, hey, now instead of 2, you get 3. And I think if you did that, you feel pretty okay with pricing at that point, right? I think that math kind of works out. If I need, and I'll pull up my calculator here for this one to make sure I actually did this right for you guys. So if we pull up the calculator, all right, so now I need 40 Now I'm going to need 60, which is, all right, so yeah, I did that backwards. It's an increase of 20 by the 60 is 33%. So I think that's right. Does that sound okay? Maybe I'm doing that wrong. Somebody tell me if I'm doing that wrong. Because you'd double the other one. Yeah. So I think it's like a 33% reduction to this price to kind of keep it consistent with where it is now, right? That way you don't create and again, I'm going off of creating an overabundance. Like, you don't want to make it so easy to go to Relic 8 by, hey, just, cut it in half, where it's super easy to get to 8, super easy to get to 9, and impossible to get to 10. Kind of keep the economy as it is and just add Relic 10 on top of it inside of this store. So I think that's one approach. And again, do the same thing with whatever the Zimbalist card, Electrum Conductor. And that's, again, this is all going off of the idea that they're going to stick to the same sort of Relic pattern where you need the resources to go from, the same things below it to go from 8 to 9. You now need them to go from 9 to 10. Or they just add Relic 10 as its own piece, and then they don't need to make that adjustment in the store. They don't need to change anything around pricing if Relic 10 is its own two pieces. I will die on that hill. Now, they did say they are adjusting the economy to make those things easier, but that could mean a couple different things. So they are going to make it easier. They did say that, but I at least wanted to kind of go from that perspective of, if you just release it as its standalone kind of thing, the changes aren't as drastic as they would be if you're going to need them again at Relic 10. So, that's a conversation to have, again, that I really wanted to be like, hey, where does that, how does that work? The next thing I would be asking the question of is, hey, where are we going to be able to earn these things? So maybe Smugglers Run 3, some events, but if we think about, say, Relic 8, when Relic 8 was released, they threw it into Territory War, right? It went to the Territory War rewards. You see your, arrow magnifiers there. And then it also went into the Challenge Pit Raid, which of course no longer exists, but we can still get them in the raid. So it went to the raid and it went to Territory War. Well, one of the things that this did was it completely changed how guilds approached players, and it really split guilds because everybody wanted to be in a Challenge Pit Raid. And I would say that was a bigger change than like the Territory War side of things, where everybody wanted to be in a guild that was capable of earning it in the raid. When they released Relic 9, where they're only available in the Territory War, right? When these are only available in Territory Wars, that further fractured guilds because they're like, okay, I need to be Territory War focused if we want to earn these things. It's not just about the raid. There's a lot of ways they can do this. What I would say, if I had to throw my hat into the ring and they asked me my advice, I would kind of go back to the way they did Relic 8, where you threw it in the raid and you threw it inside of Territory War. And not necessarily saying, oh, you have to copy those two things, but kind of in the sense of, in the raid, at the time, you were, the amount of arrow magnifiers you earned was based on your individual score in the raid. Obviously, raids have changed a lot now, but back in the day, the way that your rewards were structured was based off of your personal performance, which they've kind of done a little bit with the personal reward track, where you get guild rewards and then you get personal rewards. So I think if they kind of did a mix of that, where you can earn them via personal rewards and then you earn them via guild rewards, it does exactly what I think they've been trying to do. I don't really feel the need to push myself to get 12.1 million by score in this raid right now, because I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze. But if you threw Relic 10 materials on here, I'd make that jump now, right? Like, I would have already made that jump. Similarly with the guild, most guilds are not going to feel the need to go over 520 million, because what's the point? Well, if you add it, now again, I'm not saying they add another box, but you get the idea that you could, hey, why do we don't really feel the need to go from 245 to 375 because the juice isn't worth the squeeze. But if you're going to start earning additional Relic 10 materials here, then that conversation begins to happen. So I think that's kind of one area to look at, is say, hey, the raid is a place we could add those. I would also, however, say that Territory Wars would be a good place, again, because there's a lot of investment here. It's a guild-based game mode. I would just be a little bit more cognizant of the amount for a win and amount for a loss, because with Relic 9, as we see, my guild is just as guilty of it as others. There's a lot of sandbagging going on because you want to, hey, why would I fight a guild that's equivalent in power to us when we can completely reduce that and fight a guild who is, way below our skill level or roster level and automatically get 5 droid brains comparative to 1. So again, I want to make sure we're careful on that in Territory Wars. Other places that I think, hey, maybe it could be worth a shout here. Why not territory battles? Why not TB? I understand that for some people, you're going to be like, I do not want this in TB. That sounds terrible. But I think if you threw it into territory battles, that could be a really big, part of the game. Again, TB is kind of one of these areas where I think a lot of guilds maybe don't try as much in TB because they're like, hey, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. You could add them into territory battles, and all of a sudden you're going to see guilds start trying to push for more and more stars to increase the amount of Relic 10 materials that they could get. Again, there's balancing issues there. They did note that we are going to be getting, again, droid brains are going to be going in here, which is going to be nice. So there's, I don't know how that looks with the, are we going to get a Relic 10 piece that's craftable in here? And if so, what gear pieces are going to be utilized for that? There's a conversation to have there. Another question would be for, Conquest. Could we maybe get some rewards thrown in Conquest? You do get arrow magnifiers, and that's about it, but maybe we get some additional rewards there. So again, just a couple of areas where I'm like, hey, where are these kind of going, right? Where are they going? How are they being added? I do think that what I was trying to get at, and, I hope that it's in an area where there's impact to your guild and impact on you as an individual player. I do think that is important. I feel in a lot of cases with some guild events, they've really reduced the impact of you as an individual. And while I think that's been good in some cases, I think in this Relic 10 situation, I want there to be a little bit more individual impact over your rewards, simply because I think that's important for players to feel like they can get better, continue to improve their account. And finally, I think it's, hey, how much signal data is needed? How much of this signal data is needed? They talked about the new signal data that's going to be available in the scavenger. How much of this will be needed and where will it go? Because that begs the question of how much stuff do I need to be hoarding now? Not just the other materials, but your signal data. There's players who are still looking at trying to get Leviathan. Hey, I need to get, Leviathan. And there's a lot of farming that you'll need to do inside of, Cantina in order to make that happen. And do you feel like that's something you can pull off quickly, or is that going to take you a while? So I think there's a lot of that kind of, how much is it going to require in regards to the materials below it, the signal data, how much of the other signal data, what gear pieces, because that kind of stuff, if it's like, hey, you don't need as much of these pieces to get the new one as you do all this other stuff, then you can treat this very differently right now. I can tell you where I'm sitting in the game. I'm only going to be spending signal data that I'm confident is not and I don't want to say a mistake, but I'm not going to be going in and saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to take Jedi Master Mace Windu and his Jedi Vanguard to Relic 8. Like, that's just not something that I'm willing to do. Or I'm not pushing my Bad Batch to Relic 7. The upgrades that I would make right now, if any, are going to be Hondo related, Maz related, and maybe something like Jedi Master Kenobi, where I know I'm going to get some insane, absurd value out of it, and it's going to be necessary for my account to compete. That's kind of the level, that's the direction that I'm heading. So I hope this kind of, gets some, thought-provoking questions out there with Relic 10. And to be honest, I didn't even talk about the stats, what stats and mastery increases. I think that's a whole other discussion. I think I'm more on the fence of, hey, I'm worried about how this comes into the game and where, because I think that conversation does need to happen. I think that's maybe something that they could help answer to us. They did talk about a new game mode, and maybe that game mode is where Relic 10 is going to go. And if that's the case, then hey, maybe it's individual or a mix of individual and guild. I think all of that could be really helpful and relevant. I've kind of liked the, I like this. I have to say, I really appreciate and like this current raid structure where, hey, there's guild rewards and also personal rewards, because it does give you some drive to want to do better, right, to an extent. And I think if this new game mode is, hey, 4 guilds and then there's a personal track, I think it helps you feel like there's more at stake and you feel like you want to push yourself more to get that stuff. So again, a lot of speculation on Relic 10, a lot of questions that I hope CG does kind of give some answers to, because I know a lot of their attention has been drawn to Relic Delta, but I think we got to start this conversation on Relic 10, because next thing we know, it could be in the game and you're scrambling to figure out how to afford it and where to go. So let me know your thoughts down below, guys. Like, subscribe, comment. I love you all. May the force be with you, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, my friends.